We are at the end of the fourth line on the top. You test. And we are in describing and explaining the phenomenon of this beetle that has the effect of uniting opposites despite their opposition, not by virtue, as we said before, them recognizing each other and submitting and so forth, but in their fullest state, in the state of their fullest expression of themselves and recognition of their own stance, there is this total beetle, and their differences are insignificant. And this is the principle that there is a Gilui Oir Elyon, a supreme Oir. And this supreme Oir, as is being explained, this is the Oir of the Atzmus Ein Sof. The Atzmus element. Atzmus has been discussed many times. Atzmus is not translated in anything. Atzmus is not translated in Ava, in Yira, or any quality. Atzmus always remains Atzmus. And thus, in recognizing of Atzmus, all qualities fall into insignificance. Ahava Yira, Rotzu Shuv. Because there is something of extreme supremacy. And we could say a superior truth, but a mitis himotze, which is not defined by anything, which does not need an explanation, does not need a beginning, an origin. A why is it there? Truth does not beg for an explanation where it's coming from and what it stands for. And thus, when there is that recognition, then there is total hanocha. It's called hanocha atzmusay, setting himself, his own etzem, his own quality. It's not a question of personal interest. His own quality, identifying himself versus others, is totally inadvertent, totally insignificant. Because then you have only one thing that you recognize is amitis hakavona ho'elyena, the truth of the kavona. Why is it Amitis Hakavona? You're saying the emes of Atzmus, what's it Amitis Hakavona? Amitis Hakavona is the transference of Atzmus into his Metzias. Who am I? What am I? I am the Kavona from Atzmus. Das mit Amitis HaKavona. If you say that he puts himself aside, so what does he relate to? Atzmus, as we said, is not transferable. He relates to Atzmus the way it exists. The Atzmus outside of Atzmus. In what way is Atzmus exist outside of Atzmus? In the Kavon of Atzmus. There's much more to be said in this. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity. I don't want to go too far out, but there is more points to be made as we go on. V'chein b'hashuv, at the end of the fourth line. V'chein b'hashuv, and similarly, when he is in the shuv, we said the rotzu b'shuv, the rotzu gives way completely for the shuv. Why? Because that's amitis hakavana. This is where atzmus is to be found. Similarly, when he is in the shuv, yiya bebchinas bitl. He will be in a bitl quality, in bitl state. And how is this bitl in the shuv express itself? Sheyiya mikol mokoim simcha v'yoinek. That there will be mikol mokoim, despite the fact that he is totally dedicated, and he put his own qualities aside. All he recognizes is kavon elyono, and yet in this state that recognizes kavon elyono, there is simcha v'yoinek. Recognizing kavon elyono means that he is not participating on his own in this pursuit. He's going in Torah mitzvahs, shuv, into the world. But he is not a participant in the world. He is there because of Kavana Elyain. There is not his own contribution to it. He is besimcha because it approximates his quality. He understands he can relate to it. No, it's not because of him relating to it. It is because of Kavana Elyain purely. So where does the simcha come from? And oinek, not only simcha oinek. The simcha oinek there is the simcha oinek shel maila. He is so totally united with the kavana elyaina that which delights, atzmus delights him. We spoke many times about the phenomenon of light. And we said that in light, we were able to identify several different madrigas. The lowest madriga is where we, as physical entities, physical people, are able to benefit and actually use the light. We can see objects. This is the light that comes out on our level. How do I know there is light? Because I can see objects. Then there is a totally, we identified many different levels. Just want to go straight to the point which I want to make. There's an element of light, if we say daylight. The true phenomenon of daylight is not that I identify daylight because I can see objects. It goes the other way around. In daylight, seeing object is not a discovery. It's not a phenomenon. Not seeing is not possible. The objects spring out, they beg to be seen. There's no possibility otherwise. So I see the object not because I see them, but because I said they're visible. Because of the reality of the situation, that's why I see that they're there. It's not a special action on my part to see them. The experience of seeing them is not a personal experience of the individual. It is being part of the reality. This is the Inyan of a shuv, where there is a participation in the joint shel maila, not because I am participating, but because that's the reality. In order to unite with that reality, there has to be total personal bittul. He's not looking at it from his angle. Because the minute he's looking at his angle, then he has to have oineg from his perspective, by his definition. But here, this is not what's happening. He is in total shuv. The reason he's in shuv is not because he chose so. On the contrary, he's interested in the rotzo. The reason he's in shuv is because that's the kavona elyeina. The kavona elyeina, as we discussed many times, that kavona and rotzen are not one and the same thing.
Not more than?
Not the same thing. In rotzen, there is inherently an oineg. In rotzen, you sense what this is about. Kavona does not bring along any kind of reason, any kind of significance. Kavona is strictly the etzem. Like we have in our example of the host and the guest. No matter what transpires between them, what is the most significant thing? What is the reality? The very essential state itself, which cannot be translated into anything else. And if you lose sight of that essential state, and you pay attention to all the niceties and all the goodness of the thing, you lose the whole thing. Kavona elyeina, just as we explained many times the inyan of Iyar. We have this, we illustrated this from the human phenomenon of having a home, and where the person in his home is present in every last square inch of his home, even though he is not really present there. Even if, as we said, this is not this is not a corner that he had ever visited or he had ever known that it exists. This is his home. He is there. By virtue of what? By virtue of his rotzen and noinig, by virtue of some kind of a functionality of any level? Not at all. It is just the reality of his presence. In other words, here there is a total, there isn't anything that flows out and is being translated and is brought into this new place. Like we gave the illustration that if a person has a home and he fills the entire home, his presence fills the entire home, and then this home is broadened out. He takes down a wall and moves it 10 feet. Does he then have to move himself into those 10 feet? He's in automatically. Because this etzem does not need to be brought. Because by virtue of the fact that this is an etzem, as we discussed many times, it's a subtle thing. Truth is everywhere automatically. Etzem means that there is a certain truth in the human being. What is the truth in the human being? That his presence in the world has a truth quality. It's not just defined by functionality. And therefore his presence is automatically wherever this is his home. There isn't anything that needs to flow from him into that new place. Because if there were something flowing from him, it's not the etzem. Then you don't have him. Then you have whatever. You have his rotzen, you have his Ayin. You don't have him. And etzem means that you have the etzem. Kavona, to kavona, you have the etzem itself. This is his kavona. This is not that what he bestows. This is him. This is the beetle that we are talking about, both on the Rotzu side, that the Kavon Elyon there should be Shuv, and he goes into the Shuv not because he appreciates, not because he understands what it is, not because there is anything to understand. Like in the case of the person spreading out the extra 10 feet, is there anything to understand how that happens? What spreads out there? There is nothing there. It's the very same entity. He doesn't become any bigger by expanding his home. It's the same person. This very reality is there now. Das ist Pshat HaEtzem. And Kavona represents that etzem. So mitzad this kavana, he goes to the shuv because that is where he finds the etzem. And within the shuv, he has an element of simcha and oinag because he's a true participant in this etzem, in this kavana. How can it be that he's a true participant in this kavana? This is not by virtue of his oinag, by virtue of his appreciation of this inyan, but because he is one with this, he's totally bottled to this truth. Like we said yesterday, that in total reality, it's It's quite challenging to find it in one's mind. But that is the real truth. This is the way the neshama looks at things. That when we observe anything, or think of any midas of anything, what we are seeing is not the object, but we are seeing the command of the Creator that it should be. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, the oisi is that I created this object, this is what's in there. It's not the object. It is the very presence of the Creator itself that you're looking at. Because that's the only truth. So if you were interested in the object, if you have an interest in it and understanding, so you're looking at the object, but you have no interest. So what are you seeing? How come the object is still there? Because the Creator is there. How the Creator there? Because He said, I want you to see this object. This is the Kavanah Ayin. And therefore there is Simcha ve'oineg in the Shuv, which is really a phenomenal concept. V'yiyeh acharov rotzu, and thus.
Why is the simple? Why is there simple Lamaya? Because he's connected. Because he's participating in the Kavanah Elyona. That's automatically Simcha Noineg, because that's the reality of the Maila. In other, what's the reason why participating in this reality automatically means that there's Simcha and Noineg? Because the reality is, I'm answering my own question, because the reality is basically. There's Simcha there.
Right. There is nothing, if I can put it this way, there's nothing richer than Atzmos. Since Atzmos is such a dry thing, it's a dry thing from when you cannot be participant. There's nothing richer than Atzmos.
Is it like being in love with somebody? You surrender. You're one.
You're bound to come up with some in the world idea. No, it's not.
No.
And that, just to put in my comment, that is a stupidity.
Okay. Why?
Because it's only when you don't have a purpose in your own life you fall in love. What's your life about?
I thought that
It's like this lady pulling her dogs. Come on, children. I mean, what?
Well, that's. But
Person has his own kavanah of being in this world.
we're talking here about being one with Atzmos. Giving
Atzmos Elokei, because there's a kavanah Elokei.
Okay, so but
So you become one with this other human being. What?
but it's.
All right, Shmuel. Let's stop there. Bobby and I had.
I don't understand this.
You'll have to dig a little bit deeper. V'yiyeh acharov rotzu. And then there will be a rotzu after the shuv. Why will there be a rotzu? Because since that there is an experience of simcha v'yoineg, simcha v'yoineg becomes enticing. I want to get a better hold of it, an understanding of it. That creates the rotzu. Ve'ahakach shuv. Then afterwards shuv. But this whole flow of rotzu and shuv, and from shuv into rotzu is on a completely different level than the one we discussed before, that it is due to some kind of a personal understanding of the Inyan. I'll explain in a minute. What this Rotzu V'Shuv represent is the pure phenomenon of Atzmus, like we said before. There's Atzmus. On the one hand, Atzmus is like a dry thing. On the other hand, there is nothing richer than Atzmus. Atzmus is not a composite of anything, as we have already learned and we're still learning. And there is nothing that is not contained in Atzmus. Atzmus yesh le'yesh b'hakol. These are the two relation, the two recognitions that come through in the avodah of Rotzu V'Shuv. Rotzu is focused on the pure truth of the Atzim itself. There's nothing there. The Atzim itself, that's all I want. Now the Alter Rebbe says, I don't want anything, I just want you alone. But you alone already has everything. And that comes into the shuv. And once that there is a shuv, which means that there is some kind of an experience of the greatness of Atzmus, then you begin to focus back into the Atzmus. What is the truth behind it? And this is how it goes back and forth. Because in Atzmus as a reality, the reality of Atzmus stands for both of these things simultaneously. It is nothing and it is everything. And in order for one to sense this and to participate in this, it has to be total beetle to the Yetzer. Because with one's own faculties, with one's own seichel and midas, there's no way. You have no shaychus of this. Only when the etzem is present, only when there is pure etzem. There's nothing else. And then it is expressed, it is recognized in these two fashions of the etzem and so to speak, and everything else. Learn, Chassidus explains, and everyone, I'm sure, had come across this principle, a melech. Malchus. There are 10 spheres. Then there is Malchus. Malchus is the less of the 10 spheres. is the lowest of the 10 spheres. There is nothing in Malchus. Malchus has nothing of its own. The light is bothering you?
Yeah.
Pull it upwards. Not that dramatic like that. Malchus has nothing of its own. On the other hand, everything finds completion in Malchus. All the spheres are ultimately flowing into Malchus. Where do we see this? We see this in the fact that a melech, on the one hand, a melech is in his palace, and a melech doesn't get involved in anything. He's completely above. At the same time, the entire development and enrichment and expansion of the country is all representative of the melech. This is you could say, the Rotz of a Shuv in that arena. This is the aspect of hiskalus. Shemitzad gilui oir elyoin. The hiskalus that represent that comes mitzad gilui oir elyoin. Not because of each allowing for the other, but because there is something supreme. Shagam k'boy ha'hafochim heim b'tokfon u'b'shitus ativ, and while the ha'hafochim and in the state that the ha'hafochim are b'tokfon u'b'shitus, and in their full power, strength, and in their simplicity, which means that this is the only thing they know. I don't know anything else. Yis'ardu v'yiskallu yachad. And yet, they will unite, and not only unite, but yiskallu. They will actually recognize one another. Because neither the Rotzu is because I want to be Rotzu. Nor the Shuv is because I want a Shuv. The Rotzu is because I want Atzmos, and the Shuv is because I want Atzmos.
This only applies though when he has this total. In other words, it's not, or maybe it is the pure ratzai, but it's a ratzai with the bittul of hanachas.
The ratzai, not
that is why there's the ratzai, because he has
that's right. The ratzai is an actual expression of the presence of Atzmos.
So when he. But earlier we said that we talked about a ratzah that he could have that. Okay.
We have reached our time limit. We meet Hashem tomorrow.
Okay.
Just went into this. Okay. All right. Have a good day. We are closing shop.